Hey, Dr. Malone. Appreciate you joining us again via Zoom. We got a pretty big response from the video we did last week on COVID. I guess people like to see that lawyers get sick with potentially fatal illnesses. I'm kidding, but there was a lot of interest. I mean, I was shocked that I got the virus. As careful as I was being with masking and as careful as we were being with the office and testing every week, I guess the fact that we were testing every week, I could accurately show when I got the virus almost to the day, which was helpful. But in any event, I tested negative again last week. So I've tested negative twice, and it's been 26 days since my last symptom. And then I had the antibody test last week, and I tested positive for the antibodies, I guess. So now I'm set up, I guess, to go do and give those antibodies in hopes that somebody could use that as the, I guess, convalescent plasma therapy or whatever it is they're doing with the antibodies. So I thought today we would talk a little bit about the antibodies, how long they typically last to protect you from the virus. I guess I asked you to look that up last week.
Yeah.
Why don't you speak to the antibodies and how they work in regards to post-infection situation?
Sure. All right. So first of all, this is what lab result looks like. Here's your actual lab sheet that we received from Dr. Bailey, showing that you had a reactive IgG. So I wanted to show that to people because red means it's reactive, and a reference range would be non-reactive. So that'd be perhaps someone who's not had the infection. So this is good news for you, especially in the context of feeling better.
So an IgG is a certain kind of antibody. There's different kinds of antibodies. You develop different kinds of antibodies at different times during the sickness, I guess, or illness. Go ahead, doctor.
Yep. And so that's what I was going to show here. So you're seeing, I guess, that there's a couple options for rapid antibody testing. And so this is with COVID infection all the way to your left, where the antibody level is 0, is an incubation period. So that'd be the first couple of days of your infection, or when you aren't even, or when you're asymptomatic or not symptomatic yet. And then if you were to check in the first 3 days of when you were ill, Joe, your IgM perhaps might have gone up, and that would have been found on that rapid screen that's available for, I think, like $75 cash at some places around town. And I guess in your setting, the PCR is the gold standard to say you have the infection, and there's really no need to do the IgM. So one thing I will say is that with a positive IgM and no other testing, there is still a recommendation to get a PCR test as your confirmatory test.
Right.
So the IgG is really what we were interested in with you last week, and that's the longer term immunity. So the IgG binds to the spike proteins, the corona of the coronavirus, to stop it from invading or infecting your cells. And so, you're at present, you're immune. Now, you're not immune to getting the virus on you. You're immune to having the virus enter into your cells. So you can still be a vector if you were practicing zero hygiene and someone who was infected was in your proximity and had sneezed on you, and then you went and had contact with someone else. You could be the person that passed it to the third player in the triangle, I guess. Right. So you're still a vector, but you are immune, and that's why. This other image I wanted to show people is, there's a bunch of, I guess, it's not really even debate, it's questions that are being asked about how long you'd be immune for. So this is a good, and we'll share the link on this. This is from JAMA. And so this is another overlay showing the B cell, which is where we get antibodies, and then the T cell response. T cell is another form of our body's immune system. And it shows along the timeline where you'd see the different cells doing their job to fight off an infection and then to combat against one in the future. So that IgG, the green hump there on the bottom, that's 7 weeks out, they're saying. And then they say, does it start tailing off, and how long do we last? And I'll share that in just a second. But then the little dotted line, that shows that, a year from now, that if you get infected with the same strain, the idea is that your body is going to generate a bunch of antibodies a lot sooner than I would if I've never been infected. And you're going to tolerate that second infection, if you get it a year from now, a whole lot better, to the point where hopefully your symptoms are much less. You may not even know you had it. So that's kind of the memory of making these antibodies, even if they go down to zero. So if we check your blood 2 months from now, you may not have the IgM on there or the IgG on there. And that's not bad news. That's just, hey, it's not circulating a level in my blood that is freely, readily available. But then you can generate it pretty quickly after you do get exposed to the infection again. So one thing I shared with you last night, I think in some of the reading I was doing, was Harvard ran, in the Harvard Gazette, they ran an article, and they referenced a Science Immunology journal article where they were tracking how long some of these people were immune, or rather had detectable IgG levels. And they're saying that these people are going to have a systemic immunity for quite a long time, especially in the context of a severe infection. So people who are severely infected, which I would consider your infection to have been closer to the severe end of the spectrum, you actually have a better IgG response and immunity moving forward than
Give me a big head, doctor, making me feel
well,
superpower.
then the asymptomatic, they're finding the asymptomatic people who are PCR positive, never even knew it, and or had some mild headache. They're finding that those people don't have as profound of an IgG response over time, and it weans off.
Let me say something.
Yep.
If I could trade whatever this is now, this IgG superpower, versus not ever having the virus, I would go with not ever having the virus, just FYI, because it was a miserable 6 weeks, and it was not fun, and it's left me with some lungs that, I'm doing 2-a-day workouts still in between work and working out and whatever, but I'm worn out faster. Sleep is still not spectacular. And so, I'm sure I'm running 5 and 6 miles a day and doing some weight training, and maybe I'm doubling up on the cardio some days because I feel like I missed out on 6 weeks of it. So, and I'm getting tired faster, and I can tell I have a little less lung capacity, but I don't want this. You don't want this. So I don't want this video to be sounding as if, oh, well, you just get the virus, then you got a superpower later and everything's great. No, it's not. First of all, it's not worth that because it's miserable. And on top of that, I still don't know in December if my lungs are going to look like they did before this virus or not. They look like hell right now, right? So
yeah.
They did 2 weeks ago when I had that CT scan. So it's not worth having. Okay, so stay masked up. I'm glad Pensacola still has a really low percentage community spread. What's the number today? Is it still pretty low?
Well, a little jump on the percentage. I have the one from today here. So here's our community numbers. We've got 17, 8, 18, 9, and 22 the last 5 days on new cases. Percentage-wise, though, we were down in the low 1% range, and we spiked up to 5% with today's release. We had a couple of blips if you look back in the last 2 weeks. So in all, I would say we're averaging about 2.5% across the last 2 weeks. So it's good to see that. I'd like to be even lower. But I'll say, I agree with everything you're saying, is that you don't want to get infected just to get the antibody, because, this is all with the caveat being that this is what you get infected with the same strain. So if they find that this thing mutates so much, in theory, yeah, you could get infected again, and your antibody is not going to be as protective, perhaps. Right. So it's not we joke and say it's a superpower, but it's not something that you want to go through that 6 weeks of misery to get. Yeah. So, and then the other thing I was going to mention is, where you're talking about donating plasma, and I would encourage people to at least explore that and see if you're a candidate for it. I know locally there's One Blood is where you would call, so be interested to see what the outcome is if that's something you decide to pursue. And I'm
actually going to do that tomorrow, so I think we're going to try to take some video of that and put it up on the website or whatever the heck we do with this, and Facebook or Twitter.
The reading I've been doing is that you're in the sweet spot for it. So if someone says, "Hey, I was infected back in February, can I donate?" You know, you're not going to have the level of immunoglobulin ready to go. So you're a candidate based on the time frame that you're in right now. If you wait a month from now or 2 months from now, then you're not a candidate. But that's one last thing I wanted to add is these people that say, "Oh, well, I want to get my antibody tested. I had it back in May." Well, it may not show up. So it's probably not worth going through that test. So
Right.
again, I think you were a prime
Especially if you
example
didn't
last
have,
week when we tested.
especially if you didn't
Yeah,
have a lot of symptoms back in May and you're just
yeah,
almost asymptomatic. You probably went like this, up and then down. So
yeah. And we know a couple people. We've had some people, you know, at the office that have had cases like that, and to test their antibody level right now is probably not worth it.
right. Okay, well, we're busy at the office. I've got a federal court hearing tomorrow, and then I've got another state court hearing on Thursday. So I'm staying busy with work, of course, and working out, getting myself back into shape. If you have any questions about car wrecks, personal injury cases, you can find us on the web at zarzaurlaw.com. If you have any questions about this COVID stuff, I'm happy to answer them. A lot of people have asked me for Mark Ryan's contact information. I'm not sure if he's taking new patients, but he can be found at the Woodlands Medical Clinic office complex. I think his particular facility is located on Creighton Road, so a lot of people have asked that. The other thing I wanted to do was there's a lot of physicians that I didn't mention last time that I should have that were part of my team, I guess you want to call that. So in addition to Dr. Malone and Dr. Ryan and Dr. Grisey and Dr. Bailey, I had a couple of other friends around the country. One, Dr. Jeff Farragher up in Seattle, Washington, who is an ER doctor. He was advising me. We also had Dr. Ali Sarah down in Miami, who's a friend of mine. She also was giving me advice on how to proceed and was looking at all the medicines that people were prescribing and advising, and she was saying grace over those things. So there's been a multitude of goodwill towards me, and I appreciate that, especially from the medical people in my life. So, and then of course my dad, who's a physician, I can't forget him. He was also saying grace over this stuff. So in any event, I wanted to make sure I mentioned everybody. If you do have any questions about this stuff or getting in touch with these articles or getting a copy of these articles, let us know. If you've had the virus and you had symptoms and you think you've developed the antibodies, it will help all of us if you donate your plasma, which I'm going to do tomorrow, hopefully. And so anyway, that's our 2 cents for today. We hope y'all stay well. If you have any questions about us, you know how to get in touch with us. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks.